Hi, I'm Megan Finnerty, and I'm the host and the founder of the Storytellers Project. I'm with USA Today, and I am so excited to say Happy Holidays, Merry Christmas. I hope all the things you're celebrating, Hanukkah and solstice is around the corner next week. Oh, sorry, I hit my camera. I hope that you are feeling particularly festive this time of year, because I know it has been a long, weird year, and so many of us are just excited for 2020 to kind of wrap up, which I understand. But before it does, we really wanted to take a moment here at the Storytellers Project to come together and share true first-person stories with you about our lives over the holidays. The good, the bad, the ugly, the awkward, the weird sweater, the gift that you wish you could regift, but you know you'll see that person again. All of these things come together tonight in this series of live storytelling from people across America. You guys know since 2016, we have brought more than 100 shows a year to communities across the nation, but we've canceled our in-person season, and it seems like we'll stay canceled for a while as part of the USA Today's network's response to the pandemic. And while it feels unsafe to be together in theaters, we know it feels necessary emotionally, socially, spiritually to be together, at least on the internet. So tonight, we have literally handpicked some of our very, very best storytellers from across the country. I am not just saying that. I am so excited to have these storytellers with us. They're coming to us from across America with stories they've told before in their own hometowns, bringing them to you hand-selected here today. With that, I'm excited to introduce you to our tellers. With Galen Gordon of Cincinnati is here. Thanks, Galen. Teresa Strasser is here from Phoenix, Arizona. Sarah Hairston Berkley of Fort Thomas, Kentucky. Dylan Alexander Mack of Los Angeles. Hi, Dylan. Julie Lawani of Phoenix. And Joe Finnerty, no relation, also of Phoenix, Arizona. Thanks, everyone, for being here tonight. If you're familiar with the Storytellers, you know that tonight is not a TED Talk, it's not Toastmasters. It's not a how-to, an inspirational speech, a lecture, or a slideshow, and we will literally not sell you anything, except maybe a subscription to your local market paper. Instead, storytelling is based on visiting. You know, I'm obviously here in my home, and I hope I'm visiting with you in your home, or maybe out on your patio, or somewhere safe that you feel good. If you hear anything, my husband and my 1-year-old son are home, and so we're doing this live. We want you to be with us in spirit, and that means that we ask you to open your heart and receive these stories in the spirit in which they're intended. All of these storytellers have volunteered to work on their stories, polish them, and get them ready for you. And speaking of which, they all are going to bring a different attitude and style to their telling. Some of these stories will be polished and professional. Some will be casual and conversational. All of them are authentically delivered because we don't coach our storytellers on like how to be themselves. Instead, we just make sure that their stories are meaningful and have universal values worth celebrating this time of year. Typically, our holiday shows across the nation are our most attended. So it does feel a little weird to be bringing this to you just on the internet, but I hope that the heart and the meaning and the values are able to come through just as strongly as they might if we were all together, with like fancy decorated cookies and an open bar. With that, I'm really excited to welcome up our first teller. Teresa Strasser has told before in Phoenix. We're very grateful for her to bring her sense of humor and a story about her mother to us tonight. Take it away, Teresa.
When I was a kid, we lived in San Francisco in the 1970s, and as hippie a situation as you might be picturing, quadruple that. My mom ran a coffee shop in the Haight-Ashbury district called Sacred Grounds, drove a VW Bug, was heavily involved in the folk dance scene, and we had an improvisational beat poet living in our garage. Imagine a beat poet, but with less structure? Her best friend was Unity. Unity's daughter was Harmony, and the school we all went to was called Synergy. Totally. Now, I'm not here to brag about my mom's serious hippie cred, but nobody out hippies my mom in the 1970s. She was radical, she was far out, and she was groovy. And she was also Jewish, but as you can imagine, that came in a distant fourth. We were not Jewy Jews, we were Jew ish. As far as I could tell, my mom's main expertise when it came to Judaism was knowing which famous people were Jewish. Now, you have to remember, this is before Wikipedia and four Adam Sandler songs. And the only way we had of knowing if famous people were Jewish was to ask our mom. It was like a game. My brother and I would say a name, and we could tell just by the way she repeated the name back to us if we had struck gold or Goldstein or Goldfarb. Mom, are Simon and Garfunkel Jewish? Paul Simon and Art Garfunkel. And we knew. The other Jewish thing she did was Hanukkah. In particular, she had a gift for gift giving. My grandparents were immigrants from Europe with no comprehension of American gift giving customs. They would do things like, remember that bicycle we got you 3 months ago? That's your birthday present. Are you being chased by Cossacks? No? Happy birthday. Only all that would be in Yiddish. She was so scarred by her foreign parents and their crap gift giving skills, she vowed never to do that to us. For the most part, though, I would describe her parenting style as somewhere between slapdash and benign neglect. But Hanukkah, oh, Hanukkah, that was her time to shine. The other 357 days of the year, do the math. She was pretty tuned out. She was a single mom, working 2 jobs, doing a lot of folk dancing, going to her women's empowerment group to become one with the moon. My brother and I became one with Haystack's Pizza Delivery. I can actually still remember their phone number, 415-647-1929. We were free range before that was even a thing. We took the city bus to school, and when it was time to visit our father in Los Angeles, we took the Greyhound. 10 hours right through the prison belt of Central California. Oh, look out the window. San Quentin. One summer, she dropped us off with our grandparents for a month so she could work on a tree farm in Vermont with her boyfriend, Rusty. Being a mom was part bummer, part buzzkill. But then Hanukkah came, and all 8 nights were magic. We would gather in the front room of our Victorian, light the menorah, say the blessing over the candles, and open a present each night. My mother would remember a sweater that I had casually admired at Ann Taylor 5 months before, and there it was. Luxurious rose-colored flower stitched on a cream cardigan, the kind of sweater that made you believe for a second that you were the kind of person who would own that sweater. Every year, she scrambled to come up with 16 gifts. So, of course, some were utilitarian, pencils, erasers, not even the good smelling ones, and of course, socks. Every year, you knew that one of your gifts was going to be socks. On the first night, she always put out all 16 gifts so we could choose one every night. My brother and I had wildly disparate gift opening strategies. I liked to open my worst gift night one, save the best for last. He went for that best gift night one. So by the end, he was always stuck with the socks. Night 8, I'd be holding a treasure. He'd be holding the short end of a stick. His poor strategy left him bereft. Every year, resigned that nothing else good was going to happen for a very long time. You did the math. 357 days of doom. This always put a pall over that last night because even though I would be opening a set of miniature Clinique lipsticks in black honey that my mom somehow knew I would love, he would be wearing a harsh shade of sad. One year, I was 9, my brother was 11. He begged our mom, as usual, to hint at that top gift so he could open it on night 1. He did. It was a lefty first baseman's glove, Rawlings, just like the pros used. By night 8, I had opened my pencils and erasers and socks, and my best gift was waiting for me by the lit menorah. He was down to that bulky, unmistakable, wrapped plastic bag of thick white cotton gym socks. He opened them up. Yep, socks. I opened my gift. It was a gilded music box, red velvet inside, with a pink ballerina spinning in point shoes to the sound of the nutcracker. I had never seen anything like this, but if I had, I would have spent my entire life longing for it. I watched her spin, then I caught sight of my brother's face. He looked at me with equal parts loathing and despair. All that stretched ahead was a foggy, dark winter. Then my mom looked at those socks and she got a glint in her eye. Who gets glinty about socks? Maybe you should look inside the socks. My brother looked puzzled, but he pulled open a sock and looked inside, and he pulled out a $5 bill. That was a lot of money to us in those days. Maybe you should check another sock. Another sock, another 5. Another sock, another 5. She had managed to stuff $5 into each one of 12 socks. To this day, I have no idea how she repackaged it to make it look like it hadn't been tampered with. What did she have, a vacuum packer and a resealer hidden somewhere? His joy made the sound of my music box the most beautiful song I had ever heard. She had outsmarted his night 8 disappointment. He had $60 of his own money, which he spent on Rush Records. For those of you who don't know the band Rush, their lead singer, Geddy Lee Weinrib, Jewish. My brother and I grew up. We moved on and we moved out and we stepped into the world, probably wearing socks from a plastic bag, and we took our lipsticks and our Rush albums and our very imperfect understanding of Jewish rituals and everything that we tried to hide about our counterculture upbringing and everything that we relished. 4 years ago, after getting sick and bouncing back and getting sick again, my brother died of cancer at age 47. And I feel like I'm holding the music box and he's got the socks. And I don't want to hear that music. And I don't want to be the only one left with this memory, but I am, because 4 months after my brother died, my mom also passed. Maybe of a mysterious infection she just couldn't fight. Maybe of a broken heart. I know. Way to bring down the Zoom. That's what happens when you invite a Jew to a holiday party First we celebrate, then we bring the pain and suffering. And I know I'm not the only one missing those who aren't here to watch the candles burn. Grief spins me like a bullshit dreidel that always lands on dread, but I keep playing. Because now I have 2 children. I'm the gift giver, along with my husband. I'm also the plan maker, the coordinator, the trip decider. In other words, I'm the mom. And I think about my own mom all the time, and I ask myself, what are the socks that I can stuff with a $5? How can I cram a surprise into something mundane? How can I stuff the happy into the sad and let them both exist? She gave me that instinct and that question because she always did have a knack for gift giving. And to this day, it knocks my socks off. Thank you very much, and happy 6th night of Hanukkah.
Oh man, Teresa, thank you so much for your story. I got teary. It's such a beautiful and funny and charming story, and you are so resonant at the end. I cannot imagine that there is a parent, particularly a mother, like who's listening to the story right now, who's not just relating to with the fullness of their heart. So
Thank you.
thank you
so
thank
much,
you.
Megan.
Oh my gosh. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we really appreciate Teresa. And if you appreciate her, you can like on Facebook or YouTube or wherever you're watching this. Also, she is eminently Googleable. She did not ask me to say this, but she has a super cool podcast. She is an author. If you're an old time friend of the Adam Carolla show, she was on there a lot. So Teresa is fantastic. And we're really, really grateful for her for kicking off our show. And legit, she did not ask me to like talk about her awesome podcast, but she's great. Google Teresa. Okay, with that, I am excited to welcome up our next storyteller. Galen is here to, oh, wait, real quick. I want to thank Galen. We're here. Let's do it. Galen has a story that he's bringing to us about Cincinnati and a very special time he had one Christmas in the downtown business district. Take it away, Galen.
So, can I tell you how I became Santa Claus? About 10 years ago, about 2010, I was working at a hotel in downtown Cincinnati, and I was working in the service industry, and I kind of think of myself as a community service person, and I like to be involved in the community. I like to give back, and I joined an organization called Downtown Cincinnati Incorporated. If you're not familiar, they are responsible for promoting the downtown to the public, promoting the businesses, promoting the merchants to the public. And they handled a event called Downtown Dazzle. And also, they were responsible for Santa at Macy's. And that year, they thought it would be great to create some diversity and some inclusion. And they wanted to have an ethnic Santa. So they asked people on the committee to think about who we know who might be a good fit for that role and who might be available for a few shifts to perform this role. And so we all kind of promised to go back and think about who we thought would fit. And I thought about it, and I really had one perfect person who I thought would be fantastic. And that was my dad. My dad was retired. My dad was probably needed to get out of the house. He had a belly. Also, he was good with young people, as he used to coach sports, and I thought it would be a great opportunity for him to kind of get re-engaged with young people. And so I call him up, and I'm telling him all about it, and I'm getting him hyped up, and I'm getting him pumped up and telling him how great it would be to come down and be Santa. And in that same phone call, he told me he couldn't do it. So there I was. Okay, I didn't have anybody, so I thought, well, surely they would figure it out. They'll come up with somebody that they know in this entire city who can perform this role. So we get back to our meetings and we come together, and sure enough, they figured out who they wanted to be Santa. And that was me. I had no desire to be Santa. I had no gray hair, no beard. I certainly didn't have this waist growth that I have today. But I knew I liked kids, and I knew that I could impact someone. So they put me in my Santa suit, and off I went to go sit on my throne. Santa at that time was in Macy's, and when you go into this Macy's, they've got a shoe section and a women's clothing, and then there's some sunglasses over there, and then over around the way here, there's perfume, and then on down past the perfume, beyond it, over in the corner, is where they put Santa. In the corner. Nobody puts Santa in the corner. So I go over and I'm hanging out. I'm being Santa. And it's real slow. And it's Thursday, by the way. And so there's nothing going on. And I'm trying to figure out if it's for me. And it's really not my thing. And I see people out in the store. There's definitely people out there, but they're not finding their way over to me. And so I have these bells, right? I got the Santa bells, and so I'm like, you know what? Let me go out there and see where these people are. So I shake my bells, and people kind of hear the bells. And if you're not familiar with this Macy's, it was like 3 or 4 stories, and so. You would take the escalator up, it'd take me up to the second floor, or take me down from another floor. And so I would ride up the escalator, and I'd ride back down the escalator. and I'd go up there and just trying to find somebody because they weren't finding me. And so I wanted to try to find somebody, and I would be like, "Merry Christmas, Merry Christmas." And it brought me to a really big moment. The biggest moment for me that really made a huge difference. One day I was coming down the escalator, and I see this family. It's with small children, and I shake the bells, and the kids kind of look around, and they hear the sleigh bells. They're kind of looking at kid level, right? They don't know where the sound is coming from. And as I come down, I'm getting closer, and they start to realize that the sound is coming from right behind them. And they turn around and they look at me, and they say, "Santa, Santa." And I am hit with this epic emotion, this overwhelming feeling that these kids, they like me. They really like me. And as soon as I get down to the bottom of the escalator, I go to them, and they run to me, and both the kids, they hug me, and they say, "Santa, Santa." And we sway back and forth, and I'm asking their names, and they're telling me their stories, and it's this raw emotion, this pure feeling from these kids who are so excited just to see Santa Claus. And at that moment, I felt like Santa. And at that moment, I believed. I've seen a lot through Santa's eyes. Crying babies, wet babies, pull your beard babies. They've all been perfect. I get families too. You get families for all different kinds of reasons. Some families, they kind of come around the corner, they just happen to be there, and it's like they look over and they see me. Oh, There's a mom who gets off work so she can rush home and get her kids from the suburb way outside of town, and they run back downtown just to see Santa. There's a network of moms who have adopted children of color, and they've been coming to see me for 7 or 8 years. And at the time, those kids they were so small I could hold them, some of them. They could sit on my lap even. And now, some of them are just as tall as I am. There are families that coordinate their clothing. Like, they all get together and they want me to be in their family Christmas picture. It's really exciting to be able to share that with them. Being Santa has given me an opportunity to have a real impact on our young people and our grown people too. And we still have some work to do with our grown people. Santa now is at the Carew Tower, and it's another office building downtown. And if you're not familiar, there's this 2-story atrium in the middle of the tower. And there's this Christmas tree, and it's also 2 stories. And it's a big old Christmas tree, and with lights and ornaments and presents all around, and this big red chair. And there I am, right there, right in the middle. And people still walk past me. I don't know why. Some people just don't like Santa Claus. I'm not one to go down certain paths, right? Unless you take me there. But there's a fat man in a big red chair in this big tree. You can't miss me. I didn't know how to handle it at first, and so I just started to wave at everyone. I waved and I head nodded. I Merry Christmased every person that walked past me. I had to realize that, Christmas and the holidays, they can be tough for some people. And I figured out that Santa's job is to bring good cheer, even for those who don't want it. So now, I wave. And sometimes they learn to wave back. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Galen, thank you. Merry Christmas to you. Thank you so much for your story, but also thank you for showing up in such a huge way for your community. No, truly, Galen, it is a blessing to hear your story. And you are so thoughtful about what you're doing and who you're doing it for and how you're doing it.
Yeah.
You have modeled incredible community level generosity here this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I love this show, right? Hello, Christmas spirit. Oh, I got very teary about that. Our Santas matter, God bless, Galen. Well, in addition to all of our storytellers and you, our viewers, I would like to take just a second to thank our national presenting sponsor, Humana. If you've been sticking with us for a while, you know that they started sponsoring the Storytellers Project in the Outside Times in 2019, and they have stayed with us during the pandemic to bring you these virtual shows. And we're fundamentally grateful because it allows us literally to bring you stories like these. They believe that sharing stories makes for healthier people and healthier communities, and we know that is true. We need these connections to each other and to health now more than ever. We also know that is true. As the pandemic continues to change and evolve, Humana remains committed to the health, safety, and well-being of the people and communities it serves. And they are not just saying that. If you visit humana.com, they certainly can talk to you about like getting great insurance, but they also have tons of free tips and advice. They have just launched a virtual community center where I was recently we had more than 60 people on an online storytelling class about how to share your personal stories this Christmas so that you can feel closer to your friends and family. And that's like literally just something Humana is offering people. You can log on and learn from me how to tell a great holiday story. So, this is a really sincere thank you to Humana for sticking with us in a really weird 2020 and helping us get ushered into what we hope is a strong and healthy 2021. So, thank you. I'd like to bring up our next storyteller. We have the same last name, and he used to tell me that he would tell other people that he was my grandpa, but he's not. He is, however, a real friend of the project. Joe Finnerty has told 3 times in real life in Phoenix, Arizona, and it is with the support of his family and himself that he is telling a story with us this evening on the internet. With that, Joe, thank you so much. The floor is yours.
This year, the virus caused my family to scale back some of our holiday celebrations. Are you kidding me? I hated it when this prevented me from celebrating them with my 10 great grandchildren. It caused me to think about how I celebrated holidays while growing up in Hoboken, New Jersey, the mile square city located on the Hudson River, facing Manhattan. When January came, it reminded me of the first holiday that I can think of. It was New Year's Eve, 1932. Near midnight, my teenage sister awakened me in time to stick my head out the window of the parlor and beat a spoon on a pot to welcome January 1933. What I heard was noise. What I saw was a hooligan stealing my brand new tricycle from behind the apartment's fence. With it, he stole some of my innocence as well. A theft I shall never forget. February featured the birthdays of Washington and Lincoln. During my grade school years, I participated in many pageants that celebrated them individually. My stage credits include the year that I carried the axe to chop down the cherry tree, and another year when I delivered the Gettysburg Address. Now these icons are forced to share the stage with many other presidents. I wonder how school children will celebrate the next one. Counting ballots? In March, the Irish marched up New York City's Fifth Avenue every year to celebrate St. Patrick's Day. But I never celebrated this holiday, despite the fact that my parents were born in Ireland and raised on Galway farms. They never spoke to me about those days. So, as a result, I never learned how to dance a jig or to sing, "Oh, Danny boy." I enjoyed celebrating Easter Sunday because it usually fell in April, at which time I would spend the day eating a chocolate candy cross that came in a box surrounded by jelly beans. It was a product of the Lofts Company. Now, when that place of business ended or failed or folded in 1941, I pretty much stopped celebrating Easter. In May 1940, I wore a red poppy on Memorial Day to commemorate the Civil War dead. Later that day, Hoboken staged a great school track meet on the campus of the local college, Stevens Tech. I had the lead in a 50-yard dash until suddenly a boy zoomed by me to easily win the race. He later went on to win a track scholarship from Notre Dame. But that particular Memorial Day is always etched in my brain as the one in which this speed demon left me behind, eating his cinder dust. June is my birth month. In 1937, I turned 10. For some unknown reason, none of the guests showed up at my party. Now, this dashed my hope that someone would give me a Monopoly game as a gift, because that was my passion at the time. I had to eat the entire cake by myself. That cheered me up. July was highlighted by Independence Day. For years, Hoboken boys managed to acquire giant firecrackers from Manhattan's Chinatown. In 1941, I joined a pre-NASA rocket science team and spent the day using them to blast cans into space. A playmate wandered over to the launch pad just as we ignited another one. The can almost took him with it for a ride. Now, how my chums and I managed to avoid injury while setting off these explosives is a mystery to me. August was a month that was filled with hot, muggy days, each one perfect for swimming. Now, I frequently cooled off by leaping into the filthy Hudson River, but I much preferred spending the day swimming in the Palisades Amusement Park pool located near the George Washington Bridge. It featured 4 diving boards and a fake beach. But my happiest days were spent body surfing in the Atlantic Ocean at Point Pleasant on the Jersey shore. To me, the entire month of August was a holiday, but it was followed by Labor Day, which signaled the end of summer and the start of another school year. In 1939, I entered the 8th grade on September 4th, just 2 days after Germany invaded Poland to begin World War II. Afterwards, Labor Day always reminded me of those 2 unrelated events. In October 1938, on Columbus Day, Hoboken staged a parade in his honor. It featured the city's one and only hook and ladder fire truck. As it rolled by, I waved to a relative who sat atop, steering the pivoted rear end. I was more proud of him than I was Columbus. Later that month, on Halloween, I dressed up as a ragamuffin before venturing out to engage in warfare with girls, armed with a silk stocking filled with flour. When an enemy came into range, I would swing it around and whack the unfortunate wench, leaving white evidence of my attack on her behind. Now, girls seem to understand the role they played in this ritual because they never flinched. On November's election day in 1940, I joined a group of boys who put small white potatoes in cans, they were called Mickeys, and ignited them. We swung the cans around to facilitate burning. With luck, they might burn to a small, black, darkened delicacy that only Huck Finn might enjoy. Despite its unsavory appearance, I always claimed mine tasted great. Later that month, my family celebrated Thanksgiving just the way Norman Rockwell portrayed it. We feasted on roast stuffed turkey, complete with all the trimmings, gravy made from the drippings, cranberry sauce, sweet potatoes, mashed white potatoes, French cut green string beans, homemade muffins, and apple pie, never pumpkin. Now, in those days, it was the custom for boys to go door to door asking neighbors if they had anything to give us for Thanksgiving. Usually, we wound up singing in backyards, hoping to win a reward such as a penny or a piece of candy. This December, due to the virus, my wife and I will celebrate Christmas with far fewer kin. We will celebrate regardless, because this may dampen but not douse the spirit of goodwill that the Yuletide season exemplifies. As part of our decoration, we will and have already put up our 60-year-old aluminum tree in our living room, while our much younger artificial pine tree is on display in the family room. I keep thinking back to my childhood, wondering which Christmas left its deepest impression on me. I select 1933, as that was the year that Santa left me my Lionel electric trains. I played with them endlessly. I still have them. They're stored under my desk. Like me, they haven't run in years. A collector once appraised them for $350. They are not for sale. They are priceless. So are my memories. Thank you.
Joe, thank you so much. Thank you for your memories. Thank you for your jokes. Thank you for showing up 4 times for us. We really appreciate you.
Thank you very much.
Awesome. Oh my gosh, we are so lucky to have so many storytellers from across the country. And specifically, if you appreciate Joe, I don't know if you want to like do the math, but you know, he has some memories that are pretty old. You can always like leave little comments on YouTube, on Facebook. You can send a message. Certainly you can chat with us on one of our storytelling platforms and we will get that note to Joe. We're so grateful for these memories. Where else could you learn about Mickey's? Joe mentioned this to our team on a practice, and we Googled it, and we found a story in the New York Times food section about potatoes cooked in cinders in Brooklyn. And so, you know, Joe, we fact checked him, and it's true, and he's in the New York Times food section. So anyway, with that, we have such a magical story next from a real life ballerina. She's going to talk to us about the wonder and magic of the Nutcracker. Take it away, Sarah.
Hi, everyone. Thank you. I am a former principal dancer with the Cincinnati Ballet, and over the course of my career, I danced in the Nutcracker for 31 years. I think if you ask any professional dancer, they would tell you that they have sort of a love-hate relationship with the Nutcracker. I tend to be on the side of love, although I've had my moments of hate. The Nutcracker has been a huge part of my life in so many positive ways. And it has definitely defined me as a dancer and has also shaped my life after I stopped dancing. Maybe many of you don't know the story of the Nutcracker, but it's a beautiful story about a young girl named Clara. And she receives a Nutcracker from her Uncle Drosselmeyer on Christmas Eve, and she falls in love with this toy. And it takes her on this journey through the land of snow and the land of sweets, and that's where she meets the Sugar Plum Fairy. It's really, really a special, special story. I started ballet when I was about 3 years old. My sister was a dancer, and I wanted to do everything that she did. And my first memory of going to see the Nutcracker was actually going to see her dance. And I absolutely instantly fell in love. I loved the music. You hear it in all the stores and restaurants during Christmas time. I loved watching the snow falling. I loved all the parts for the young children. Of course, the Sugar Plum Fairy and the excitement of seeing a young girl play Clara. And after I saw it, I knew right then, I want to be a dancer. I want to play Clara. I want to play the Sugar Plum Fairy. And I was determined. So when I was old enough, I auditioned for the Nutcracker. I took ballet at a school called Charleston Ballet Theater in Charleston, South Carolina. And it was a school and a professional company all together. My first role was a mouse, and my mouse part was special. At least I thought he was special. My role got to bring the sword out to the Mouse King. So clearly I felt like I had been chosen for this part because I was destined to be a professional dancer. And this role was going to be the role that was going to start my career and get me there. But of course I wanted to be Clara. Every girl wants to be Clara. So the next year I auditioned again, and instead of getting Clara, I was casted as a Mother Ginger child. And Mother Ginger is this woman that comes out on stage, and she's on this platform, and usually it's on wheels, and there's all these students and little dancers under her skirt, and we pop out and we start to dance. Well, we were under her skirt, we were marching to the music, marching, coming out. And as we were under there, the platform ran over my foot. And luckily my foot was fine, but my shoe was stuck under the platform. So I pulled my foot out. I was like, I got this. I know what I'm doing. So I pulled my foot out of the shoe, and I was like, I'll just dance in my pink tights. And I was the first girl out, clearly, because I knew I was very special. And I popped out of the skirt, and we were facing upstage, so towards the backdrop, and we were not facing the audience. So I was like popped out, and I realized, oh my gosh, I'm not facing the audience. So I was like, okay. So I skipped over around the skirt to my spot, and now I was facing the audience. Well, all my friends popped out and they went the other way. And I don't know if any of them are still dancing, but they started coming towards me. I started going towards them. We started running into each other. It was the biggest disaster. And when we came off stage, the artistic director at the time said, this was terrible. You guys were horrendous. And if this happens again, you will be replaced. So, of course, I was devastated. And I remember crying to my mom, and my mom saying to me, you know, Sarah, this is just one of those moments that is going to make you stronger. It's going to carve you and pave the way for the next moment in your life, and you'll be able to handle the next thing that comes towards you. And I thought, you know, I was like 8 years old. What can be worse than this? But anyway, I continued dancing, and I continued working towards my goal of being a professional dancer. And I continued to dance in the Nutcracker for many, many years. And I actually never danced Clara as a child, but I danced many, many great roles. You know, I was either too tall or too short or not good enough at the time for Clara, but, you know, I did get to dance many, many great things. And when I was about 19 years old, I auditioned for ballet companies, and I got a job with the Cincinnati Ballet. And that particular year, they were choreographing a new Nutcracker, which companies tend to do every 10 to 15 years. They will choreograph a new one to sort of freshen things up a little bit. And this year they were doing that. So when I joined, We were in the midst of learning all these different roles. And in this particular version, Clara was not played by a child. It was played by a company member. And I remember thinking, like, I don't know if I really like that, because I loved the magic of being able to watch a child play Clara. But I did think, this is my chance. I could play Clara. And what's great about this production is that Clara also turns into the sugar plum at the end. So it was like killing two birds in one stone. So I was so wanting that role. And luckily, I was casted in it. And I remember being out on stage, running around in the snow, watching the tree grow. And it was a feeling that I will never forget. It's one of those feelings that I think professional dancers need to feel in order to help us get through so many years and so many performances of Nutcracker. But it truly, I felt like I was in another world, and it brought back all those memories of how I wanted Clara so badly. And now finally in my early 20s, I was getting to play her and experience that magic. And I got to play her for about 6 to 7 years. It was a really, really special time in my career. In 2010, Cincinnati Ballet also choreographed a new Nutcracker, which is the Nutcracker that we are doing now. And in this particular version, I was actually learning quite a few different roles. I had a couple of roles that were being choreographed on me. And one particular role was the Snow Queen. And the Snow Queen had this beautiful tutu, this beautiful white tutu, costs like probably close to $3,000 with all the material and the stones, and hours and hours and hours of work went into this tutu. And I went out one night and I was dancing with a partner, and there were a lot of tosses and throws that we had to do, a lot of moments that things could go really wrong. And one night my partner went to toss me up onto his shoulder. And when he did, the panty of my tutu got stuck on one of the buttons of his tunic. So I couldn't get up on his shoulder. I couldn't get off of his shoulder. He finally got me down in a very, very awkward position. And I was sort of leaning over with my fanny attached to him. And we were trying to get away, and I couldn't. So he took the elastic. He grabbed the elastic off my tutu. He started to pull it. It finally snapped. He kept pulling the elastic. The elastic kept coming and coming and coming, and he tossed it off stage. And at that point, my tutu went from my waist up to here. And I was literally out in a tutu up to my chest. And I remember thinking, people always say to you, if you get nervous before you go on stage, just imagine the audience in their underwear. And I'm thinking, but I'm the one that's in my underwear with a $3,000 tutu up to here in front of 3,000 people. Like, this could not get worse. It was so embarrassing. I came off stage and I just remembered thinking about that time under the Mother Ginger skirt where my mom said to me, this moment will prepare you for the next moment of your life. And that was so true. But luckily this time, my artistic director was laughing in the wings. And she said, you know, Sarah, this is just one of those things that happens. And while I was back there, wardrobe ran immediately. They got out their needle and thread. They tacked me up, and I had to go back out there and continue dancing. So needless to say, I danced that role for many more years, and I never went back out on stage without wearing like 3 pairs of trunks under my tutu and having wardrobe check the tutu to make sure that it wasn't going to bust. And I think to this day, there's no Snow Queen that goes out to dance that pas de deux that doesn't have 3 trunks on and wardrobe checking to make sure that that tutu is going to stay put. Anyway, I continued dancing for a few more years. And in 2016, I retired from dancing and I became the Academy Director of Cincinnati Ballet. My life was changing. I was getting married. I was marrying the master carpenter of Cincinnati Ballet, and I was taking on 2 bonus children, and I was ready to move on. I was ready for my life to not be centered around myself and my career, and I was ready to enjoy the holidays and to watch the Nutcracker from the audience and to be able to watch my students on the stage taking on these young roles like Clara. And I was just ready for a time where life was a little bit more calm and I could just sit back and enjoy. A few months after I got married, I got pregnant, and I was due on November the 21st, which happened to be the same week that my husband, who's the master carpenter of the ballet, was scheduled to be out of town putting Nutcracker together in Detroit. And I thought to myself, I'm not even dancing, and the Nutcracker is still controlling my life. So I begged my doctor to induce me a week early, and after some thought, he did. And I gave birth to my beautiful son, Wrigley. And 3 days later, my husband got on a plane, flew to Detroit, and put the Nutcracker together. My son is now 3, and this year I was looking forward to taking him to the Nutcracker and sitting in the audience with him for the first time now that he's old enough to be able to sit in the audience. And with the current state of the world, Nutcrackers across the world are being canceled or transitioning to a virtual type performance. The sadness of not having this tradition this year has really made me realize how special this ballet is for young people, and how sometimes we don't appreciate what we have until it's not there, and how important this ballet has been to my life every year since I was 5 years old. I am wishing for a new year when I can take my son to see this amazing ballet live in the theater so that he can see what shaped his mother and father into the people that we are today. Thank you so much, and happy holidays.
Sarah, thank you so much. I want you to know it takes a lot of character and grace to share such a humiliating story in front of. No, I'm kidding. But truly, oh my gosh, I cannot imagine that. Also, the idea that the women were sewing it on the side of the stage, live in real time. I mean, I think one of the things I love so much about your story is it is a real, like a literal backstage view at the level of professionalism and grit that it takes to make the Nutcracker happen every year.
Thank you.
Oh my gosh. Thank you so much, Sarah, for both for your community contributions and for your story.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. Well, we are happy to have her. Sarah came to us from our colleagues at the Cincinnati Enquirer, which is also where Galen first told his story. So this is a shout out to our colleagues in Southern Ohio, or in the greater Cincinnati region. We are lucky to have you being part of the Storytellers Project family. With that, I am excited to welcome up. We have kind of a tonal shift with our next storyteller, but Dylan is here to talk to us about a different side of the holiday season that I know many of you will be able to relate to. Dylan, the floor is yours.
Hey, Que Pasa America, coming to you from downtown Cornersville at the moment. Okay, on June 27th, 1997, I left my home in Ventura, California to attend the United States Military Academy at West Point. On June 2nd, 2001, I graduated from said West Point, but the story really doesn't begin until it was October 7th, 2004. I boarded a military chartered flight headed for Iraq and the Northwest Sector and its cornerstone city of Mosul. I spent 12 months at war, 9 of them in this sort of seminal city of Mosul, fighting Al-Qaeda in Iraq. It was led by a man named Abu Masad Zarqawi. And it was just a really dark and violent time. But you see, going to war and being at war is not really combat. War is not tactics. War is not shooting, moving, communicating. You can train for all that. War is really a state of mind. And so this story is sort of about that state of mind and how you get there. It's sort of a nebulous feeling, sort of one of those things you sort of know it when you see it. So if you pardon me, let me give you an analogy. Let's say you're headed somewhere and they have boxed lunches. As you know, boxed lunches are sort of defined by the sandwich that's in it, the roast beef, the turkey, the ham and cheese. Well, let's say by the time they get to you, they're running out, they're running low. They come to you, they say, oh, I'm sorry, all we have is peanut butter and jelly or tuna fish. Not the best, but okay. But guess what? You still have a preference. You still have something that you'd like. So if that's the case, what do you choose? For me, let's say tuna fish. All of a sudden, the person passing out the box lunch says, no, I'm sorry, we don't have tuna fish. We only have peanut butter jelly. Now, that level of disappointment, do you have that? Can you see that? Now, that level of disappointment for getting peanut butter and jelly instead of tuna fish is sort of how you feel about your own self-preservation. To put it differently or more succinctly, war is when you wake up and you don't know if you're going to live or die, and you're okay with either outcome. And so this is the story of how I came to war. An Iraqi insurgent disguised himself as an Iraqi National Guard and detonated himself in front of 500 American soldiers eating lunch in Fab Merez in Mosul, Iraq. It ended up killing 22 people. This was December 21st, 2004, 4 days before Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Oh, by the way, MT, I'm live right now. Sorry about that. Bill Jacobson was not the lone casualty of the Chow Home bombing, but Bill Jacobson was a friend of mine. And along with Bill Jacobson, 21 other people sort of passed away in this Chow Hall bombing. I first spoke to First Sergeant Bobby Gallardo, and he told me that Bill wasn't hit by any shrapnel. That became a point of conversation amongst us. I went to him. I said, what happened? He's a tough guy. He's from East LA. Bobby G goes to me. He goes, sir. He goes. It's been terrible. He goes. Bill got up. He didn't know what he was doing. He took a knee, and then that was it. He never got up. Later on that day, I left Bobby G. I went to go see my best friend. His name was Easy. Eric Joyce. He went to West Point with me. He's actually born a day before I was. And when I get there, I climb up to his hooch, and as I'm walking up, I see these gore-covered boots that have been there for a month. It's not clean, just sitting there with human remains on them, too human to clean. I kick open his door. I call him an MFer. That's what I call him. I walk in. I reach in my bag. I pull out a bottle of contraband, Wild Horse whiskey. I pass it his way. And I ask him what's happening. Now, Easy's from South Boston, Dorchester, to be exact. And he goes up to me. I ask him what's happening. He sits there. He says, he goes, yo, brother, it's been real bad over here. He goes, yo, Bill, Captain Jake. He got hit. He gets up. He stands there. He goes, then all of a sudden he just takes a knee. He goes, after he takes a knee, blood just starts pouring out of his ears, his nose, his mouth, everywhere. He goes, it's real nasty. I sit there. I say, and then after he said that, I just looked at him. I said, Jesus. Now, at this point, Easy, he'd seen things. He'd been on his side of the river. I'd been on my side of the river. We'd been fighting. But at this point, Easy was a vet. We get done. We sort of talk a little bit more, and then we get up. We're headed for the funeral memorial. We walk up to this funeral memorial, and it's this large, sort of igloo-ish white tent. And out front, there's pictures of all the dead, 22 Americans. But memorials, they never get better. They just stay the same. There's crying. There's 21 gun salutes. There's amazing grace. Eventually, they're going to sit there and they're going to put your life on a PowerPoint presentation. I pray to God nobody put my name or my life on a Bill Gates presentation. But to be honest, I didn't really pray back then. I just sort of lied to myself. Later on, I walk up and they give speeches. Colonel Carrillo, who's my colonel, he loved Captain Jake. His men loved him. I could tell by the speeches. They all sat there and and I thought to myself, I said, man, this is a tremendous thing. And I felt bad. I felt bad because Captain Jake, he was a good man. Captain Jake, he was probably better than me. And then when I leave, I sit there and say to myself, this is one hell of a way to spend a Christmas Eve. The next day I wake up, I go to the chow hall. I eat the turkey, the stuffing, the ham, the cranberries. I eat it all, and it tastes like food. After that, I walk over to the atrium, and it's this big, expansive palace. It's one of Saddam's palaces. It has these sort of marble staircases that sort of crawl up on each side, this huge chandelier. And on each side of the staircase is a Fijian men's choir, mercenaries. These men were there, and they start singing. They start singing these island hymns. They start singing island chants, chants of Christmas, and they're thankful. Their voices were stupendous. They're sweet and earnest. They brought with them just the South Pacific wind. You see, the Fijians have fought with the Americans in every war since World War II. These men were true friendlies. And I'll be honest, the concert made me feel better. Afterwards, I walk out and I walk to a guard tower and to pull guard duty on Christmas. This is a tradition of the officer corps to pull guard for the enlisted. It shows that we care. And I look out at a city, Mosul, a city without much power, and I feel bad. And I think about the dead. I'm at war. Christmas in Mosul. Thank you all.
Dylan, thank you so much for your story. I appreciate your friend who's clapping for you. Dylan, thank you for your story and thank you for your service. We really, really appreciate you telling us this story and sharing these insights. Well, with storytellers, we get all kinds of stories. And so I know that was Hi, everyone. I'm so sorry. My earpods died and I was muted briefly. Sorry. Dylan, I was thanking you and I was saying we really appreciate you bringing us that story because we know so many people can relate to your experience, but so many of us can't. And we don't know people who've walked in your shoes. So bringing us this story really matters. With that, I'm excited to welcome up our last storyteller. Julie Lawani is bringing us a story about her family, about hard times, good times, and her incredible father.
Thanks. So I miss my dad, especially during the holiday season. When I think of him, I often think of a road trip that we took as a family when we went from South Bend to Cleveland, Ohio. We went to Cleveland in this crazy, crazy car. So it was a blue Cutlass Sierra, and it had this rather unfortunate mechanical problem that whenever we turned on the heat, billows of smoke used to fill the cabin of the car. And my sister, she was learning how to drive. So she had gotten into an accident a couple months back. And so the passenger side door did not open. So we only had one functional door on the car. And in fact, if someone wanted to get in through the passenger side, what you'd have to do is you'd have to roll down the window and that person would have to kind of fly in. And then sort of mid-air, they would need to do a roll or a somersault of some kind so that they could find their way to the back seat. Now, the back seat actually had its own drama because the bottom floor of the car in the back had completely rusted through. So you could only step in certain areas. And if you took the floor mat back, you could actually look down and see the gravel of the road we were traveling on when we were driving. So this was the car that my parents decided to take on a road trip to Cleveland. I'm a first-generation Indian American. My parents came to this country with nothing other than a wish for a better life. We knew that we were going to struggle as a family. We just didn't know how much. My dad's client for his business had reached out to him to say that they wanted to renegotiate their contract with my dad. And so my dad decided for us all to take this road trip. And during the entire trip there, my parents were strategizing on how my dad could possibly increase the scope of the contract and maybe even double its value. Now, this client, like I said, was my dad's only client for the entire business. So not only did he have only one client, but he only had one contract. And my dad's business was bleeding money. On a daily basis, my older sister and I used to hear my mom and dad scream at each other over finances. There was a stack of paychecks from my dad that my mom never bothered to cash because she knew there was no money in the bank. And in fact, just a few days before we had taken this trip, I had overheard my mom say to my dad, I think we're going to finally lose the house. So this trip was important for all of us. When we got to Cleveland, my dad changed into the only suit that he owned, is a black suit, and he used to wear this really pretty red silk handkerchief on this side of his, in the pocket on this side. After he got changed, he dropped us off at a shopping mall that had a pretty extensive playground area, and he went to his appointment. Now, I'll be honest, I was really confident that my dad was going to be successful in his pitch and we were going to be able to celebrate Christmas properly. I had been coveting for about a month this really pretty green dress, and the reason for it is because I thought I would look cute in it, but the other reason is that I had a little crush on this boy named Josh whose favorite color was green. And so I was convinced that if he saw me in this dress, he would finally pluck up the courage to ask me out on a date. So if you can imagine, all of this was going on, and then about 2 hours later, with Christmas carols playing in the background and my 5-year-old brother sitting on Santa Claus's lap asking for more blocks, I saw my dad walking towards us. As he got closer, I noticed that he was making a pulling motion with his arm, and I realized that something actually very terrible had just happened. I walked over to my parents and I overheard my dad say to my mom, "They're not renewing the contract. They're canceling it." My mom, I think she didn't quite understand what my dad was saying, so she just kept repeating, "If they cancel the contract, what are we going to do for money?" My dad said, "I don't know, but we'll figure it out. Let's just go home." There was a look of utter disbelief on my mom's face, and I looked over at my sister, and she understood how serious this was as well. Both of us had talked about how we were worried about possibly losing our house, but we didn't think for a second that it was possible that my dad would lose his only client. So to say that this was devastating news, it wasn't just devastating news for my dad or my mom, it was devastating for the entire family. Now, whereas my sister remained silent, I turned and looked out the window. My dad, he walked over to me and he said, "Julia, come on, it's time to go home." I turned to him with tears streaming down my cheeks and I said, "I'm not going anywhere with you." And my dad said, "Why? What happened?" And I said, "Daddy, I'm sick and tired of being poor. Everybody at school knows we don't have any money. I'm tired of lying to my friends, telling them that I don't want to go to their homes when the truth is I can't go because we can't afford to give them a gift. I want a new dress. I want to be in a car where both the doors open. I want to not worry whether or not we're going to have enough food for dinner." My dad smiled. He knelt so that we were eye to eye, and he said, "Julie, I know it's hard, but I promise I'll get us through this. Do you trust me? Do you believe in me?" I looked at my dad square in the face and I said, "Absolutely not." And my dad laughed and he said, "Okay, fair enough, but will you at least have ice cream with me then?" And I said, "Yeah, of course I'll have ice cream. Nobody's that upset to turn down ice cream." So all 6 of us, we got together, we had a small treat, and my dad and I shared a small cup of ice cream. And I remember while we were eating, he grabbed my hand and he squeezed it, and we went home. We couldn't afford to have presents that year for Christmas, so my mom bought a small bag of Hershey's Kisses, and we shared it amongst the 6 of us. It wasn't ideal, but we were used to it. My parents struggled financially for many years. I watched my dad learn a new language to try to assimilate. I heard people say the most vile, racist things to him when he was trying to do was build a business. And I remember being terrified when I visited him in the hospital because one of his workers had attacked him. But during that entire time, my dad, he didn't lose hope, and he certainly didn't give up. About 7 years after the trip to Cleveland, I was visiting my parents from college, and I came home to see all of my mom's jewelry that they had used to put up for collateral to prop up my dad's business at the bank. I saw it strewn over the kitchen table. Now, in Indian culture, to take a woman's jewelry, which typically comes from her side of the family, and use it to prop up the business for the husband, it is implied, actually it's not even implied, it's directly said that this husband is not a good provider, probably not a good husband, and definitely not a good father. So to see all of that jewelry back within the family, I knew my dad had finally turned the corner. And the business was finally beginning to be okay. In fact, I remember the next day my mom, so even though they were doing better, my mom was still trying to save money. So she was going for her weekly Kmart trip. And she decided, though, she was going to wear her jewels that day. So she must have cut the weirdest presents you can imagine, because she had these beautiful huge dangling diamond earrings and necklace. And she was rummaging through the Blue Light Special bins looking for tube socks for my dad. And, you know, as weird as she must have looked, I don't think my mom even noticed, because I never saw my mom smile like she did that day. Now, I think I knew that our family was completely out of the woods financially in 2008. When my dad, he came home and he casually mentioned that he had just bought a new house for my mom for her birthday. Now, this house was about 4 or 5 times the size of the house that we grew up in. And when he just off the cuff mentioned that he had written a personal check for it, I knew my mom and dad were finally going to be okay. And I was proud of him. Not just proud of the fact that he was resilient, even though that was extraordinary, but more proud of the fact that the minute he had the means, the first thing my dad did was celebrate my mom. After watching them fight for decades over money, to see the two of them finally begin to appreciate each other was something that was so beautiful to me. About 8 years ago, I was sitting with my dad at the kitchen table in their ridiculously huge house, and we were reviewing a contract from a major investment banking firm that wanted to buy my dad's business. Now, this was a mega multi-million-dollar buyout, and so I wanted to make sure that no one was taking advantage of my parents. My dad, he was sitting next to me, and he said, "Jula, do you remember that day in Cleveland? That day I lost the contract?" And I said, "Yeah, Daddy, I remember." And he paused and he said, "Julie, there will come a time very soon when I will be nothing more but a memory, and I'm not going to be able to help you through life's challenges. So I want you to promise me that no matter what life ever brings to your door, you will never choose the path that is most comfortable. That instead you will choose to believe in yourself and what this life will give you if you're willing to work for it." And granted, it was an odd promise to extract from someone when we were sitting there basking in my dad's success in their obscenely big kitchen, but I made that promise to my dad, and I've kept it for years, long after reality intervened and my dad was no longer a part of my life. Now, I feel the burden, truthfully, of that promise most keenly around this time of the year. I wonder, did I do everything I could this year to justify the sacrifices that my dad made? Did I carry my fair share? And I know this probably sounds a bit silly, but for a grown woman especially, but if my dad met me today, would he be proud of me? You know, I think for many Christmases now, all I've wanted is the chance to hold my dad's hand again and share a bowl of ice cream and tell him that I should have believed in him that day in Cleveland. You know, I don't know what I'm going to do completely, what I'm going to do for Christmas this year, 2020. It's been a weird year for all of us. To say the least, it's been a weird year. But what I do know is that at least part of the Christmas will be spent, just like many Christmases in the past, thinking about that trip to Cleveland. And I'll go back to that time with that rusted bucket of a car. I'll think of my dad in his black suit, reaching out for me and squeezing my hand. Thank you.
Julie, thank you so much for your story. You have done such a beautiful job, I think, capturing what so many of us are feeling this time of year, which is really longing for the people that we have celebrated with in the past.
Yeah.
I do want to say your story is a beautiful tribute to your father, and I can only imagine that he's looking down on you right now, being exceptionally proud.
Yeah, let's hope so.
Well, you did a beautiful job. Thank you so much, Julie, for closing our show with such a thoughtful and heartfelt story. I know so many Americans can relate. With that, I would like to welcome up all of our storytellers, because it would be a joy to thank them so much for watching. Thank you, Teresa, Sarah, Joe, Dylan and Galen, thank you guys so much for sharing your personal stories and getting us into this holiday season with so much heart. Galen, I was wondering if I could ask you to close the show with a Merry Christmas and a ho ho ho.
Merry Christmas. Thank you.
Yay! Awesome. Thank you everyone so much for joining us. Have a great Christmas, happy Hanukkah, and a good new year. We'll see you